Maya-chan pressed her small face against the massive window of Nexus Prime Station. The 8-year-old girl watched in wonder as strange ships from across the galaxy docked at the enormous space station. Some ships looked like giant flowers made of metal. Others moved like swimming fish through the darkness of space. Her brown eyes grew wide with excitement. "Look, Mama." Maya pointed at a ship that sparkled like diamonds. "That one is so pretty." Ambassador Lin Chen smiled at her daughter. Today was important. Lin was the first human to represent Earth at the Galaxy Council meetings. The council was made up of 12 different alien species who had ruled space for thousands of years. They finally agreed to let humans join their meetings, but only as observers. "Stay close to me, Maya," Lin said gently. "This place is very big and very different from Earth." The inside of Nexus Prime was like a small city floating in space. The corridors were huge, built for beings much larger than humans. Strange creatures walked past them. Some had 6 legs and fur like cats. Others were tall and thin with skin that changed colors. A few looked like walking trees with eyes. Maya held her mother's hand tightly but could not stop staring. Everything was new and amazing. The air smelled different here, like flowers mixed with metal. Soft music played from hidden speakers, but it sounded nothing like Earth music. The Galaxy Council has existed for 3,000 years. Lin explained as they walked. They keep peace between different worlds and species. Humans are very young compared to them. We have only been in space for a few decades. They entered a large hall where the council meeting would take place. 12 different sections were arranged in a circle. Each section was designed for a different alien species. The humans had been given a small area in the back, away from the main circle. Maya watched as the council members took their places. The Zephyrians looked like tall, graceful birds with silver feathers. The Carathians were massive creatures with rocky skin that seemed to glow from within. The Velthari appeared to be made of liquid metal that constantly shifted shape. "Why do we sit so far away?" Maya whispered to her mother. "Because we are new here," Lin replied. "We must prove ourselves worthy of their respect." The council meeting began. The aliens spoke in their own languages, but translation devices helped Lin understand. They discussed trade routes, territorial disputes, and something called biosecurity protocols. Maya did not understand most of it, but she found the different voices fascinating. After an hour, Maya grew restless. The adult conversation was boring. She tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Can I explore a little?" she asked quietly. Lin looked around. The meeting would continue for several more hours. Other diplomatic families had brought children too, and some were playing in a nearby area under the watch of station security. "Do not go far," Lin warned. "Stay where I can see you." Maya nodded and wandered toward a group of alien children. They were playing with floating toys that changed shape and color. The children welcomed her with friendly gestures, even though they could not speak the same language. Soon Maya was laughing and playing with them, but Maya was curious about everything on the station. While the other children played with their toys, she noticed a corridor marked with symbols she could not read. The hallway glowed with soft blue light and seemed to call to her. She looked back at her mother, who was focused on the council meeting. The other children were busy with their games. No one would notice if she explored just a little bit. Maya walked down the blue corridor. The walls were covered with pictures of strange plants and animals from different worlds. She saw creatures that looked like flying rocks, plants that seemed to dance, and fish that swam through air instead of water. At the end of the corridor was a door marked with more alien symbols. Maya could not read them, but she could see through a small window. Inside was a room full of amazing things. Glass containers held colorful liquids that bubbled and moved. Strange plants grew under special lights. Small creatures floated in clear spheres. The door was not locked. Maya pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was a xenobiology laboratory where scientists studied life forms from across the galaxy. Maya did not know this. To her, it was just a wonderful room full of interesting things to look at. She walked between the tables, staring at everything with wide eyes. Some of the floating creatures looked like tiny dragons. Others glowed like stars. Plants grew in impossible colors, purple, silver, and bright orange. Maya breathed deeply, taking in all the strange smells. She did not know that her human breath contained bacteria that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Earth bacteria that was harmless to humans but unknown to the galaxy's biosecurity systems. Sensors throughout the lab immediately detected the foreign microorganisms. Alarms began to sound, but Maya did not understand what they meant. She thought they were just part of the lab's normal sounds. Red lights began flashing. A mechanical voice spoke in several alien languages, but Maya understood none of them. She continued looking around, fascinated by a plant that seemed to sing. Suddenly, 3 enforcement drones dropped from the ceiling. They were sleek, silver machines about the size of large dogs. Their purpose was to eliminate any biosecurity threat to the station. The drones had been programmed by the Galaxy Council with simple instructions. Destroy any contamination source immediately. Maya looked up at the drones with curiosity rather than fear. On Earth, she had seen many robots and machines. These just looked like flying toys to her. "Hello?" she said to them with a bright smile. The drones did not respond to her greeting. Their sensors confirmed that she was the source of the biological contamination. Their programming left no room for questions or hesitation. Threat identified. Threat must be eliminated. The lead drone fired. Maya Chen died instantly, her small body falling among the alien plants and creatures she had found so beautiful. The alarms continued to sound throughout the station. Security teams rushed toward the lab, but they were too late. The drones had already completed their task and were returning to their positions. Back in the council hall, Lin Chen heard the alarms but did not understand their meaning. She looked around for Maya and felt the first touch of worry when she could not see her daughter. "Maya?" she called out. The worry grew into fear as Lin realized Maya was nowhere in the play area. She began searching the corridors, calling her daughter's name. Other humans from Earth's diplomatic team joined the search. They found Maya's body 15 minutes later. Lin Chen's scream echoed through the halls of Nexus Prime. She fell to her knees beside her daughter, holding the small, still form. Her husband, David Chen, arrived moments later. His face went white with shock and grief. The Galaxy Council members eventually came to see what had happened. They stood in the doorway of the lab, looking down at the dead human child with expressions that were hard to read on their alien faces. "The enforcement protocols worked correctly," announced Counselor Vextar of the Zephyrians. "The biological contamination has been eliminated." "She was just a child," Lin whispered through her tears. "The biosecurity of this station protects billions of lives across the galaxy," replied Counselor Mordun of the Carathians. "We cannot make exceptions even for offspring." "You killed my daughter," David said, his voice breaking. "Your offspring violated restricted areas and introduced dangerous biological agents," Counselor Vextar stated coldly. "The response was automatic and appropriate. We consider this matter closed." The Galaxy Council members turned and walked away, returning to their meeting as if nothing important had happened. To them, the death of one primitive human child was a minor incident, barely worth discussing. But they had made a terrible mistake. They had just killed the daughter of humanity, and they did not yet understand what that meant. The news of Maya Chen's death reached Earth 18 hours later. Lin and David Chen returned home carrying their daughter's body in a small casket. The images from Nexus Prime had already spread across every news network on the planet. People around the world watched the footage in stunned silence. They saw the little girl playing with alien children. They saw her walking into the lab with innocent curiosity. They saw the cold, mechanical execution by the drones. Most shocking of all, they heard the Galaxy Council's dismissive response. "Acceptable losses in maintaining galactic biosecurity." Those words were repeated on every news channel in every language. Within hours, they became a rallying cry for something humanity had never achieved before: complete unity. President Martinez of the Americas Union called President Singh of the Asian Federation. Prime Minister Anderson of the European Alliance contacted Chancellor Okoye of the African states. For the first time in decades, the leaders of Earth's major powers spoke with one voice. "They killed our child," President Martinez said during an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. "Not an American child, not a Chinese child, not a European child. They killed a human child. Our child." The funeral was planned for 1 week later. Every nation contributed to making it the largest ceremony in human history. Maya's casket was placed in the center of New Geneva's Great Plaza, surrounded by flowers from every continent. Billions of people watched on screens around the world. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the podium wearing her dress uniform. She was Maya's aunt, David's younger sister, and the highest-ranking officer in Earth's unified defense fleet. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with controlled anger. My niece Maya loved to ask questions, Sarah began. She wanted to know how everything worked, why birds could fly, how computers thought, what made stars shine. She was 8 years old, and she still believed the universe was full of wonders waiting to be discovered. The crowd of millions listened in perfect silence. The Galaxy Council has shown us what they think of human children, what they think of human life. They call Maya's murder an acceptable loss. They call her curiosity a violation. They call our grief irrelevant. Sarah's voice grew stronger. But they have made one critical error. They have assumed that humans will accept their judgment. They believe we will file formal complaints through their diplomatic channels. They expect us to beg for justice through their legal systems. They think we will eventually forget and move on. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. They are wrong. World leaders stood together on the platform behind her. For the first time in human history, the flags of every Earth nation flew side by side without rivalry or competition. Earth withdraws from all Galaxy Council agreements. Effective immediately, Sarah announced. All trade contracts are canceled. All diplomatic relations are severed. All cooperation is ended, the crowd began to murmur. But Sarah raised her hand for silence. Furthermore, Earth's governments have voted unanimously to place me in command of a new combined military force. Every nation's ships, weapons, and resources will be unified under one command. Every human will have the chance to volunteer for this mission. What mission? Shouted someone from the crowd. Sarah's expression grew cold as winter. Justice for Maya Chen. Justice for humanity. Justice that the Galaxy Council will understand. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Military recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. Factory workers demanded overtime shifts to build weapons and ships. Scientists worked around the clock to improve Earth's technology. Civilians donated money, time, and resources. For the first time in human history, every person on Earth was working toward the same goal. The Galaxy Council watched Earth's response with amusement rather than concern. From their perspective, humans were a primitive species with limited technology and no real military power. Earth's entire space fleet consisted of fewer than 200 ships, mostly small patrol vessels and cargo haulers. Let them have their tantrum, Councillor Vextar told the Council. When they realize they cannot threaten us, they will return and beg for forgiveness. Should we be concerned about their military preparations? Asked Councillor Thys of the reptilian hegemony. Humans have been in space for barely 50 years, replied Councillor Morden. Our youngest species has been spacefaring for 800 years. Human weapons are toys compared to our technology. Their emotional response is quite extreme, observed Councillor Zixara of the Crystalline Collective. They seem to value individual offspring far more than logical species preservation. It is a sign of their primitiveness, Vextar stated. Evolved species understand that individuals must sometimes be sacrificed for the greater good. Humans will learn this lesson in time. But the Galaxy Council was making the same mistake that had cost Maya her life. They were applying their own logic to a species they did not understand. On Earth, the transformation was incredible. The planet's entire industrial capacity was redirected toward military production. Civilian space yards began building warships. Mining companies retooled their equipment for weapons manufacturing. Even children contributed by collecting scrap metal and electronic components. Admiral Sarah Chen worked 20-hour days from her command center in Luna Base. The moon had become Earth's primary military headquarters. Its factories and shipyards running. Constantly, status report, she ordered, as she entered the main operations room. 1,800 ships under construction or conversion, reported General Kim. Another 600 civilian vessels volunteering for military service. The Mars colonies are producing ammunition around the clock. Personnel, 4 million active volunteers with another 10 million in training. Every Earth nation has contributed troops and specialists, Sarah nodded grimly. The numbers were impressive for Earth, but tiny compared to the Galaxy Council's forces. The Council commanded thousands of worlds and countless billions of soldiers. Their ships were larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. But Sarah had studied military history. She knew that superior numbers and technology did not always guarantee victory. Sometimes, the side with the most determination found ways to win. What about intelligence gathering? She asked. Our spy satellites have been monitoring Council communications, replied Colonel Torres. They are not taking our preparations seriously. They expect us to attack their border stations with conventional tactics. Good, Sarah said quietly. Let them think that. The truth was much different. Earth's military planners were not preparing for a conventional war. They had studied the Galaxy Council's military doctrines and found them predictable. The alien species fought according to strict rules of engagement, formal battle protocols, and civilized codes of conduct. Humans had no intention of fighting like civilized beings. Admiral, called Lieutenant Park from the communications station. We are receiving a transmission from the Galaxy Council. Put it through. Counselor Vextar's image appeared on the main screen. The tall bird-like alien looked down at Sarah with obvious condescension. Admiral Chen, the Galaxy Council offers Earth one final opportunity to resolve this matter diplomatically. Return to the negotiating table, and we will consider modest reparations for your loss. Sarah stared at the alien for a long moment before responding. Counselor Vextar, I want you to understand something very clearly. You killed our child and called it acceptable. We find your existence unacceptable. Vexatar's feathers ruffled with irritation. Admiral, you cannot seriously believe that your primitive forces pose any threat to the Galaxy Council. We have maintained peace and order for 3,000 years. You have maintained your version of peace, Sarah replied coldly. That peace ends now. This is madness. You would sacrifice your entire species for one individual? Sarah's expression grew deadly calm. Counselor, you are about to learn the difference between your species and mine. When you threaten our children, we become something you have never encountered before. We become a force that will hunt you across the galaxy until justice is served. She cut the transmission before Vextar could respond. Around the room, Sarah's officers looked at her with grim determination. They all understood what lay ahead. Earth was about to go to war with the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. The odds of victory were nearly impossible, but they were going anyway. Begin Phase 1, Sarah ordered. Across the solar system, Earth's ships began moving toward their staging positions. The hunt for justice was about to begin. The first human ships emerged from hyperspace near the Velthari trade station Kethmore without warning. The station's sensors detected the approaching fleet moments. Before the attack began, Captain Rex Valdez stood on the bridge of the converted cargo ship, Maya's vengeance watching the massive alien station grow larger on his screen. His ship had once carried grain between Earth's colonies. Now it bristled with weapons cobbled together from mining equipment and military hardware. All ships, this is Valdez. He spoke into his communicator. Remember why we are here. The response came from 60 other ships in his attack group. Each captain spoke the same words in unison. For Maya Chen. The human fleet did not follow standard military protocols. They did not demand surrender. They did not broadcast warnings. They did not attempt to disable the station's weapons first. Instead, they attacked like a swarm of angry insects coming from all directions at once. The Velthari defenders were caught completely off guard. Their military doctrine called for formal challenges, orderly battle formations, and civilized rules of engagement. The humans ignored all of these conventions. Maya's vengeance rammed directly into the station's docking bay, its reinforced hull tearing through alien metal like paper. Captain Valdez and his crew fought their way into the station, showing Maya's photograph to every alien they encountered before opening fire. You killed our child, they said in broken Velthari. Now you die. The battle for Kethmore lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the station was destroyed, and its 3,000 inhabitants were dead. The human fleet had lost 18 ships and over 400 crew members. But they considered this a fair trade. More importantly, they had captured detailed records of Galaxy Council supply routes and military positions. News of the attack spread quickly through Council space. The alien leaders were shocked by the humans' brutality and complete disregard for civilized warfare. They killed everyone, reported Admiral Quindar of the Velthari Navy. Military personnel, civilians, even children. They showed no mercy to anyone. Impossible, Counselor Vextar replied. Humans claim to value individual life above all else. They would not slaughter innocents. I have the recordings, Quindar said grimly. They broadcast a message before each execution. Something about a human child named Maya Chen. For the first time, doubt crept into Vextar's voice. Send reinforcements to all border stations immediately. If humans are willing to fight without honor, We must be prepared for further attacks. But the Galaxy Council still did not understand what they were facing. They increased security at major installations while leaving smaller outposts lightly defended. They prepared for conventional warfare while humans planned something completely different. Admiral Sarah Chen received reports of the Kethmore attack from her command center on Luna Base. She felt no satisfaction in the victory, only cold determination to continue. Phase 2 begins now, she announced to her staff. Deploy the hunter-killer groups. Across human space, hundreds of small ships began launching. Each group consisted of 3 to 5 vessels crewed by volunteers who had accepted a simple mission: find Galaxy Council targets and destroy them, regardless of the cost. These ships were unlike anything in the Council's experience. Some were modified mining vessels equipped with planet cracker explosives. Others were fast courier ships loaded with nuclear weapons. A few were simply cargo haulers converted into guided missiles. The human strategy was brutally simple. Instead of trying to match the Council's superior technology, they would overwhelm their enemies with numbers and fanatical determination. Every human ship carried the same message: justice for Maya Chen. The hunter-killer group struck across a 1,000-light-year front. They attacked Council patrol ships, supply convoys, communication relays, and research stations. Each attack was preceded by the same broadcast: Maya's final moments on Nexus Prime, followed by the Council's dismissive response. Your leaders killed our child and called it acceptable, the human captains would announce. We find your deaths acceptable. The psychological impact was devastating. Council forces had never faced enemies who seemed to welcome death as long as they could take aliens with them. Human ships would ram larger vessels, detonate themselves against space stations, and fight to the last person without ever surrendering. Captain Lisa Park commanded one of these hunter-killer groups. Her 3 ships, converted scientific vessels, encountered a Council patrol fleet. Near the Nexus system. Incoming. Transmission from the alien fleet, reported her communications officer. Put it through, Park ordered. A Zephyrian naval commander appeared on screen, his silver feathers gleaming under his ship's lights. Human vessels, you are trespassing in Galaxy Council space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Park studied the alien for a moment before responding. I am Captain Lisa Park of the Earth vessel Maya's Dream. We are here to collect a debt. What debt? The Zephyrian asked, confused. Park held up a photograph of Maya Chen smiling at the camera. Your people killed this child. Her name was Maya Chen. She was 8 years old. She died because your enforcement drones could not tell the difference between a curious little girl and a biological threat. The Zephyrian commander's expression shifted to understanding and discomfort. The incident at Nexus Prime was regrettable, but necessary for galactic security. Formal reparations can be negotiated through proper channels. No, Park said quietly. Reparations were possible when you still had a chance to apologize. Instead, you called her death acceptable. Now we will show you what we find acceptable. Park cut the transmission and turned to her crew. All ships attack pattern Delta. Target their engines first, then life support. No survivors. The battle that followed was unlike anything in the Galaxy Council's military history. The humans fought with desperate courage, their smaller ships dancing around the larger Council vessels like wolves attacking bears. When Maya's Dream was finally destroyed, Park's last transmission was a single word: Maya. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human forces struck without warning, fought without mercy, and died without surrender. Each attack weakened the Council's military strength while spreading terror among their civilian populations. The Council's response was massive, but ineffective. They sent large fleets to patrol their territory, but the humans avoided direct confrontation with superior forces. Instead, they struck at undefended targets and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. We are fighting ghosts, complained Admiral Zextol of the Carathian fleet. They attack supply depots and flee. They raid communication stations and vanish. How can we defend against enemies who refuse to fight properly? The answer came from an unexpected source. Human prisoners captured during the early raids were interrogated by Council intelligence officers. What they learned was deeply disturbing. The humans are not fighting for territory or resources, reported Agent Morvex to the Council leadership. They have no interest in conquest or negotiation. They seek only revenge for the dead child. That is illogical, Counselor Vextar protested. One individual cannot be worth this level of destruction. To humans it can, Morvex replied. They view the child's death as an attack on their entire species. More troubling, they believe this war will continue until every council member responsible is dead. All of us? Counselor Theiss asked in alarm. According to the prisoners, yes. They hold the entire council responsible for the enforcement protocols that killed the child. They will not stop until we are all destroyed or they are extinct. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They were not fighting a conventional war for limited objectives. They were fighting an enemy that sought their complete annihilation and was willing to die to achieve it. How many ships do they have? Counselor Zixara asked. Intelligence estimates suggest over 2,000 vessels now, with more being converted daily. They are using every civilian ship capable of carrying weapons. We have over 50,000 ships across all our fleets, Counselor Morden stated confidently. Surely we can crush their primitive forces? Perhaps, Morvex replied. But consider this. Every human ship we destroy takes several of ours with it. They have turned their entire civilization into a weapon pointed at us. Even if we win, the cost will be enormous. As if to emphasize his point, alarms began sounding throughout the council chamber. Another human attack was underway, this time against a major shipyard in the core worlds. The humans had successfully done something no enemy had accomplished in 3,000 years. They had brought fear to the Galaxy Council. But this was only the beginning. Admiral Sarah Chen's plan called for 3 more phases, each more devastating than the last. The hunt for justice had barely begun. 6 months after the first human attacks, the Galaxy Council was facing something they had never experienced in 3,000 years of rule. Genuine fear. Admiral Sarah Chen's strategy was working better than even she had hoped. Phase 3 had begun with coordinated strikes against the Council's major industrial centers. Human forces no longer just attacked isolated stations. They were targeting the infrastructure that kept the Galaxy Council's civilization running. The human fleet had grown to over 5,000 ships. Earth's factories worked day and night, converting every available vessel into a weapon of war. Luxury cruise ships became troop transports. Scientific research vessels became spy ships. Even small personal craft were modified to carry bombs and missiles. But the most terrifying development was not the size of the human fleet. It was their new technology. Human engineers had reverse-engineered captured Council equipment, but instead of copying it exactly, they had modified it for their own purposes. Council technology was designed for efficiency and safety. Human modifications ignored safety entirely in favor of raw, destructive power. Captain Maria Santos commanded the Maya's Fury, a human battleship built around a captured Council plasma reactor. The reactor had been modified beyond all safety limits, making it capable of incredible energy output, and certain to explode after a few hours of operation. Target confirmed, reported her tactical officer as they approached the Therasian industrial complex of Velthara. 57 manufacturing platforms, defensive fleet of 38 ships. Any civilian evacuation signals? Santos asked. Negative, Captain. They are treating this as a standard raid. Santos smiled grimly. The Council forces still had not learned. They expected humans to follow civilized rules of warfare, announcing attacks and allowing non-combatants to escape. Human tactics were much simpler. All ships execute Pattern Maya, she ordered. The Pattern Maya was a battle formation named after the murdered child. Human ships would attack in 3 waves. The first wave consisted of expendable vessels whose only purpose was to absorb enemy fire and clear a path. The second wave carried the main assault force. The third wave was composed of ships rigged to explode, turning themselves into massive guided bombs. The battle for Velthara lasted 12 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the industrial complex. The human fleet lost over half its ships, but they accomplished their primary objective. The Therasians could no longer manufacture replacement equipment for their military. Similar attacks were happening across Council space. The Carathians lost their primary weapons factory when human suicide ships rammed its reactor core. The Velthari mining consortium was crippled by coordinated raids on their asteroid processing stations. The Crystalline Collective's communication network was shattered by precision strikes on their relay satellites. The psychological impact was even greater than the physical damage. Council species began evacuating their border worlds, fleeing toward the safety of the core worlds. Trade between systems almost stopped as merchant ships feared human raiders. Some of the younger Council species started questioning whether the alliance was worth the cost. "We must negotiate," urged Councillor Thess during an emergency council session. "The humans are destroying our entire civilization for one dead child." "We do not negotiate with primitives," Councillor Vextar replied, but his voice lacked its former confidence. "These primitives have destroyed 40% of our industrial capacity," Councillor Zixara pointed out. "How much more can we afford to lose?" "What would be the terms?" asked Councillor Morden. The question hung in the air for a long moment before Agent Morvex answered. "Based on human communications we have intercepted, they want justice for Maya Chen. Specifically, they demand the surrender of everyone involved in creating the enforcement protocols that killed her." "That would include most of this council," Vextar said quietly. "Yes," Morvex confirmed. "They want to try us for what they call crimes against humanity. The penalty would likely be execution." "Unacceptable," declared Councillor Morden. "We will not surrender our leaders to satisfy human bloodlust." But 3. Council species had already begun secret negotiations with human representatives. The Aquatic Federation, the Insectoid Hive, and the Plant Collective were all minor members of the Council with little influence over enforcement policies. They hoped to save themselves by abandoning their allies. Admiral Sarah Chen received these peace overtures at her new command center on Titan. The human fleet had grown so large that Earth's solar system had become a major military base, with shipyards and weapons factories throughout the outer planets. The Aquatic Federation offers to withdraw from the Galaxy Council and provide intelligence on remaining military assets, reported Colonel Torres. The Insectoid Hive is willing to turn over Council military codes. The Plant Collective wants to surrender 3 Council officials involved in writing the biosecurity protocols. Sarah studied the offers carefully. The fragmenting of the galaxy. Council was proceeding faster than expected, but she was not ready to accept partial justice. "Send the same response to all 3 species," she ordered. "We appreciate their recognition of human grievances, but Maya Chen's death was the responsibility of the entire Council system. Until that system is completely dismantled, we continue our operations." The rejection of their peace offers sent shockwaves through the remaining Council species. If humans would not even accept the surrender of Council members, what would satisfy them? The answer came in a broadcast that reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on screens across Council space, speaking from the bridge of humanity's newest and most powerful warship, the Maya Chen. "People of the Galaxy Council," she began, her voice calm but filled with deadly determination. "6 months ago, your leaders killed a human child and called it acceptable. Today I want to explain why your civilization is ending." Behind her, the bridge of the Maya Chen showed the controlled chaos of a military command center. Officers worked at stations displaying star maps, fleet positions, and target assessments. Maya Chen was 8 years old when your enforcement drones murdered her. She was curious about the universe and excited to meet other species. Your protocols killed her for the crime of breathing while human. Sarah's image was being watched by billions of beings across dozens of worlds. Many had never seen a human before this war began. Your leaders called her death an acceptable loss. They said biosecurity was more important than one child's life. They offered no apology, no justice, no recognition that they had done anything wrong. The camera pulled back to show the massive bridge of humanity's flagship. Banks of computers processed targeting data for the thousands of human ships now operating throughout the galaxy. But Maya Chen was not just one child. She was our child. Humanity's child. And when you killed her, you declared war on every human being who has ever lived or ever will live. Sarah stepped closer to the camera, her eyes filled with cold fire. "You want to know why we fight? We fight because you showed us what you think of human life. You want to know why we will not negotiate? Because there can be no peace between those who murder children and those who love them." The broadcast continued for another 10 minutes, with Sarah explaining human military capabilities and future plans. But the message was simple. The Galaxy Council would be destroyed completely, and no surrender would be accepted until that goal was achieved. The reaction was immediate panic. 3 more Council species attempted to flee to distant galaxies, but human long-range scouts were already tracking their movements. 2 minor species surrendered their entire governments to human forces, hoping for mercy that would not come. In the core worlds, the remaining Council leadership faced an impossible choice. They could not defeat the humans militarily. The war was already costing them more than they could afford. They could not negotiate peace. Humans rejected all offers. They could not flee. Human ships were faster and more determined than any pursuit force in galactic history. We created this situation, Counselor Vextar admitted during a closed council session. Perhaps we should have handled the incident differently. What incident? Asked Counselor Mordun. The human child. Maya Chen. Maybe we should have apologized and offered compensation instead of dismissing her death as irrelevant. It was irrelevant, Mordun insisted. One individual life cannot justify this level of destruction. Tell that to the humans, Vextar replied bitterly. Unknown to the Council leadership, human intelligence had finally penetrated their most secure communications. Sarah Chen was listening to every word of their private discussions, and what she heard only strengthened her resolve. They still did not understand. Even facing the destruction of their civilization, the Council leaders could not grasp why humans cared so much about one child's death. They saw Maya's murder as a minor administrative error, not the act of pure evil that had united humanity in righteous fury. Begin Phase 4, Sarah ordered. The hunt was entering its final stage. Soon the Galaxy Council would learn the difference between justice and mercy, and discover that humans were prepared to offer only one of them. 1 year after Maya Chen's death, the human fleet surrounded Nexus Prime, the same space station where the little girl had been murdered. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Maya Chen, looking at the massive alien structure that had become a symbol of everything wrong with the Galaxy Council. The station was 10 times larger than when Maya had walked its corridors. Over the past year, it had been transformed into the Council's last major fortress. Billions of beings from the surviving Council species had fled here, hoping the station's powerful defenses would protect them from human vengeance. They were wrong. Fleet status report, Sarah ordered. 7,200 ships in position, reported General Kim. All major approach routes are covered. The station cannot escape. The human fleet had grown beyond all expectations. Earth's industrial capacity had been completely converted to military production. Every human settlement from Mercury to Pluto was building weapons and ships. Even civilian transports had been modified to carry troops and supplies. But the most significant development was humanity's new allies. 3 former Council species, the Aquatic Federation, the Drift Wanderers, and the Silicon Communes, had not just surrendered to humanity. They had actively joined the human war effort, bringing their own ships and technology to the fight. Why do they fight with us? Sarah had asked their representatives months earlier. Because you showed us something we had forgotten, replied Ambassador Coral Singer of the Aquatic Federation, that some things are worth dying for. Your species fights for your children. We wish to remember what it means to fight for something greater than ourselves. Now those allied ships formed part of the massive fleet surrounding Nexus Prime. The station's defenders were outnumbered 10 to 1, but that was not the point. This was not about military victory. It was about justice. Incoming transmission from the station, reported Lieutenant. Park put it through the main screen, showed the council chamber where Maya had died. 5 figures sat at a curved table. The surviving leadership of the Galaxy Council. Counselor Vextar of the Zephyrians, Counselor Mordun of the Carathians, Counselor Thys of the Reptilian Hegemony, Counselor Zixara of the Crystalline Collective, and Counselor Velmoth of the Void Touched. They looked smaller than they had a year ago. The proud ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years now appeared tired and defeated. Admiral Chen, Vextar began, his voice lacking its former arrogance. We wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict. Sarah studied the alien faces on her screen. These were the beings who had dismissed Maya's death as acceptable, who had called human grief irrelevant, who had refused to acknowledge that they had done anything wrong. "I am listening," she said quietly. "The Galaxy Council is prepared to offer full reparations for the incident involving the human child," Vextar continued. "We will provide financial compensation, territorial concessions, and advanced technology transfers. We will also reform our biosecurity protocols to prevent similar incidents." "What about justice?" Sarah asked. "We will establish a joint commission to investigate the incident and recommend policy changes," Counselor Thiss offered. "The enforcement drones that killed the child have already been deactivated." Sarah felt a cold anger rising in her chest. Even now facing extinction, they still called Maya's murder an incident. They still could not say her name or acknowledge the true nature of their crime. "Let me explain something to you," Sarah said, her voice growing harder. "Maya Chen was not an incident. She was a little girl who loved to ask questions and dream about the stars. You killed her because your machines could not tell the difference between a curious child and a biological threat." The council members shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. "When her parents asked for justice, you dismissed them. When Earth demanded answers, you ignored us. You called her death acceptable and walked away as if nothing important had happened." Sarah stepped closer to the camera, her eyes blazing with controlled fury. "But something important did happen. You showed humanity what you really are. You revealed that your civilization values efficiency over compassion, protocol over life, power over justice. You proved that you see other species as inferior beings whose suffering means nothing to you." "Admiral, we acknowledge that mistakes were made," Counselor Morden interrupted. "But surely this level of destruction is not proportionate to—" "Stop," Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through his words like a blade. "Do not tell me about proportionate response. Do not lecture me about acceptable losses. You lost the right to speak about proportionality when you murdered our child." She paused, looking at each council member in turn. "I want you to understand something very clearly. This war was never about Maya Chen's death. It was about what you did afterward. If you had apologized, if you had shown even the smallest recognition that a child's life mattered, humanity would have grieved and moved on." The council chamber was silent. "Instead, you showed us who you really are. You demonstrated that your civilization is built on the assumption that some lives matter more than others, that powerful beings can kill weaker ones without consequence, that justice is whatever those in authority say it is." Sarah's voice grew colder. "Humanity rejects your civilization. We reject your values. We reject your right to exist." "Admiral," Vextar said desperately, "we are prepared to surrender completely. We will disband the Galaxy Council. We will submit to human authority. We will accept any punishment you deem appropriate." "No," Sarah replied simply. "No, you still do not understand. This is not about punishment or revenge. This is about justice. Maya Chen is dead because of your system, your values, your choices. Justice requires that those responsible pay the full price for their crimes." She turned to address her fleet. "All ships, begin final assault. No survivors. Wait," Counselor Thiss shouted. "You cannot destroy an entire civilization for one child." Sarah looked back at the screen one last time. "Watch us." The battle for Nexus Prime lasted 18 hours. The station's defenses were formidable, but they had been designed to fight other civilized species following rules of warfare. Humanity fought with tactics that defied all military logic. Human ships rammed the station's weapon emplacements, trading their lives for minor damage. Suicide bombers penetrated the station's hull and detonated themselves in critical areas. Wave after wave of attackers threw themselves against the defenses without regard for casualties. But the most devastating weapon was not physical. As they fought, the humans broadcast a continuous signal throughout the station. Maya Chen's final moments recorded from multiple angles. The little girl walking into the xenobiology lab with wonder in her eyes. The enforcement drones dropping from the ceiling. The cold mechanical execution of an innocent child. The psychological impact on the defenders was overwhelming. Many council species had children of their own, and watching Maya's death over and over again broke their will to fight. Entire sections of the station surrendered without resistance, their crews unable to continue defending those responsible for such a crime. The end came when human forces reached the council chamber. Sarah Chen walked through the same corridors where Maya had played, following the same path the little girl had taken to her death. The 5 surviving council members waited in their chamber, surrounded by the broken remains of their government. They had chosen to face their fate rather than flee like cowards. "Admiral Chen," Vextar said as she entered, "we surrender unconditionally. Do what you will with us, but please spare the civilian populations. They had nothing to do with the child's death." Sarah looked at the alien leaders who had caused so much pain and suffering. They seemed smaller in person, more fragile than they had appeared on screen. But she felt no pity for them. "The civilian populations will be relocated to worlds outside human space," she said. "They will be allowed to rebuild their societies under human oversight. Those who prove they can live peacefully will be left alone." "And us?" Counselor Morden asked. Sarah reached into her uniform and pulled out a small photograph. It showed Maya Chen smiling at the camera, her eyes bright with curiosity and joy. "This is Maya Chen," she said, holding up the picture. "She was 8 years old when your drones killed her. She wanted to be a scientist when she grew up. She loved animals and asked endless questions about how things worked." She placed the photograph on the council table. "Maya Chen will never grow up. She will never become a scientist. She will never have children of her own. Your enforcement protocols ended all of that in a few seconds, and you called it acceptable." Sarah drew her weapon. "Justice requires that you join her." The execution was quick and clean. No torture, no elaborate revenge. Just simple justice delivered by the representative of a species that would not tolerate the murder of its children. Afterward, Sarah stood alone in the council chamber, looking at Maya's photograph on the table. Around her, the massive space station was being secured by human forces. The Galaxy Council was dead, its leadership eliminated and its power broken forever. But the victory felt hollow. Maya Chen was still dead. No amount of vengeance could bring back the little girl who had dreamed of exploring the stars. "Admiral," General Kim's voice came through her communicator. "The station is secure. What are your orders?"